Okay, we're trying this again one more time, folks. I do not know what is going on. I just got dropped from my last live and getting ready to get restarted and just started another one. Literally, like it shut down on its own, kicked me out of my own hangout. The NSA is back at it. Maybe it's just because I said that. Maybe they got offended. But good morning. I believe we all know what the news of the day is. You can't find much else in the news other than the Florida situation. I'm going to give this a minute to run to get some people in here because they were over at the other chat and it got sidetracked. Sorry about that. Let me get the word out. All right, James, you made it over here. You missed where I got kicked out of the other one. All right, we got some people in here. Thanks for coming out, folks. I am going to share it over on the G+. Good morning, Southern Arkansas. Might be a little bit rainy out there for you today, if my weather map looked right. But did want to start off with the top issue of the day. I'm not going to say much on it. Obviously, there's tons of news sources. You're not going to have a hard time finding it. I think it's fairly apparent the communists get what they want. An avowed communist, the irony of shooting up a government school is there, but communists go about devaluing life and then get all upset and point out and try to use our own freedoms against us. And that's all I can say about the agenda behind that. Seems to be pretty cut and dry. Once again, your government cannot save you because they knew about it. You know what I'm saying. So stay safe out there, y'all. But outside of that, I missed all my news from yesterday. Obviously, because of technical difficulties. And I don't seem to be having a much better situation today, but we'll try. If we can catch up here. Oh, we got a full house already. My goodness. Southern Locust is with us. James Mack is with us up top of the hour. Daniel God is my judge with us. Good morning. Good morning, Jay Sparks. How you doing? Barry Wood has joined us as well. Thanks for coming, folks. So moving on from the Florida topic, and as much as that's going to be politicized in the next months, we'll go to start with weather from here. Lots of activity and rain out everywhere east of us, it looks like. All up and down the Rockies, rain and snow. You people out east are going to get some more rain and snow all week, I guess. They're talking about more snow at the top of the page. If we scroll up, feet to inches. So I think Daniel, some of you other folks that are out there in the Midwest, probably getting rather drenched, if not snow. I know they're digging out in Michigan still. And Barry is getting snow in Washington. Right on. And your weather sucks. Okay, Arkansas. Okay, Nina. Can't go fishing in the rain, right? But sometimes you get the best fish in the rain. And Irish UMC vet, don't forget you. What's up, YouTube? Right on. Right on. You're definitely getting some rain and weather where you're at as well. Um, but yeah, the weather map is rather active. I found it interesting. They were having a story about the Olympics the other day. Um, they were complaining about how cold it was at the Olympics. I guess it was down to like -5 in some of the places, and people just weren't prepared for that. People think Korea, they think tropical a lot of times, but they forget the Korean War and frostbite and cold weather injuries and et cetera, et cetera. So I think everybody should be expecting some weather coming in this week if you're east of Nevada. The Pacific Northwest, Barry, you know it's going to do something because it's just the Pacific Northwest, right? Even though you are a little more on the high desert side of that. Did we have a meteor shower come in last night? Or is this new or old? That's not. Media blast over Russia. This is 5 years ago. Never mind. Why it's trending now, I don't know. That looked kind of familiar. Clickbait, right? Stock markets are reacting, I guess you'd say, to the inflation. Inflation came out yesterday. We kind of didn't get a chance to talk to that, but the stock market's trending up. Everything seems to be tracking like everything's fine, and bonds are over 2.9. We talked about that several times. The bonds and the yields, that's the only thing that's going to keep inflation in check. So maybe the stock market's taking the hit and understanding they're not going to have quite the growth they are, and they're not panicking because bonds are going up a little bit. So if you called your IRA stockbroker last week, you might be all right this week. They'll tell you not to panic, right? But going over to that, if you go on a fixed income, like retired people put on a, what do they call that? Money market, stuff like that. Interest rates on that stuff goes up. Anything we've invested like that. Good morning, Walter Davis. How you doing? James, you use a lot of clickbait. I have to give you that. You're a pro. The Weather Channel uses it too, apparently. Inflation, inflation, inflation. And you can't expect to have but a lot of it when for the last 10 years we've been $9 trillion, probably roughly, thrown around. A lot of it gets destroyed in the war effort. So it's kind of that broken window fallacy. They keep throwing good money after bad. But these 10-year treasury yields are a real key indicator you want to keep track of to see how this inflation is going to turn everything upside down. So something to watch on the market side there for you. The job claims we talked about. So they're super low rates. So you can't, if you don't have a job, it's gonna be hard to find one now. Well, actually, I should say the job will be, if a jobs open up, they'll be easy to find, fewer competition to get jobs, but probably a lot fewer jobs open now until people start really seeing the benefits of these tax breaks to build jobs. Will they have enough time to bridge that gap before inflation really kicks in? All right, Daniel. Be good at the doctor. Good news for everyone there, hopefully. Now, yesterday I wanted to talk about the Netanyahu indictment, and like that story has disappeared. Um, the police in Israel were recommending an indictment against the Israeli leader, interestingly, right at the heels of Israel bombing Iranian targets supposedly in Syria. It just makes you go to wonder how corrupt other government leaders are in conjunction with our government leaders. The whole tail wagging the dog thing to distract from your own problems. And now I can't find an article about Netanyahu. I could probably find it over here on Zero Hedge, but I'd have to dig a little bit as they just go by today. But that is something to follow if there is turmoil amidst the top of the Israeli government, further destabilizing the Middle East, I guess you would say, to a certain degree. Because if Israel looks weak, a lot of their enemies come after them. But if they're strong, they're attacking their neighbors. So it's kind of a no-win situation. Inflation article here. And one article tying into the economics of the whole thing on Zero Hedge. Russia's walk to financial independence, and the BRICS nations has been quite the talk for probably the last 10 years. Brazil, Russia, India, China was kind of a catchphrase there for a long time. And then making their own bank and going to hard currencies and all this other stuff. And Russia going its own way and getting its own stuff rolling is definitely a sign. And China is doing a similar process. So I just wanted to point you in that direction. I'm not going to read through this. It goes through a lot of numbers and stuff. But economics wise, if see how the Russian yield curve goes like this, well, our yield curve is, well, first it's way down here at like 2 point something, 1 point something to 2, but it goes flat, almost straight across with a slight incline. Well, there's shouldn't have this big dip necessarily, but it still arcs up in the long term. A slightly better yield curve than what we have in the United States. So that's an interesting article about economics and the situation of Russian financial independence, which will affect all of us eventually, especially if China goes with them. Something to check out. Yeah, Walter. Walter brings up a good point out in the chat room. Hard currency worked out great for Libya. Yeah, Gaddafi got killed, yada, yada, yada. No gold backed currency for Africa. That's kind of how that works out. But Russia has a little bit more to put behind their currency as well as China. And like they had talked about for years with the BRICS Bank of Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And I believe there was another country that was joining that. And I can't remember who it was a few years back, but they were all, I guess, a lot of people would consider it conspiring, but they're looking for their own financial way out. And something I hadn't seen, the Maldives, or Maldives, depending on how you say it, I guess they've had a state of emergency. So a luxury resort in a lot of ways. There's some state of emergency, so I just wanted to look into this. It's political turmoil. Okay, so this is not a natural disaster. State of emergency was imposed on February 5th. Political chasm between the president and key opposition. So apparently there hasn't been a full-on open warfare or rebellion in the streets or nothing, but foreign governments are stopped issuing travel warnings. That's interesting. The president declared the state of emergency, run for 15 days, so it should end the 20th or 21st. There was a ruling by a judge. Okay, a judge arrested members of the leading opposition on February 6th. So that's why the president declared a state of emergency. He's afraid of issues after that ruling. So they got a little, don't go on your vacation to Maldives. It seems to be mostly internal, not a lot of, I guess you'd say, external chaos. Island Paradise, nice place to visit. I was supposed to go there one time on a government-funded boondoggle, but we never did stop. Just kept sailing on past. I hope everybody has been enjoying the Olympics. It's something to take a little distraction away. High-end skier and snowboard activities. Hockey is going on. And if you like curling, those Canadians like their curling, apparently. Where's Stan Holtz isn't in here to defend himself. Hey, good morning, Kevin. How you doing? Brazil is getting dragged down by Venezuela, Walter Davis. That's probably true. That's a good point. Border economies like that, they're going to affect each other. Venezuela is definitely in the tank, I guess you would say. Yeah, Walter, India and China have had their issues cross-border and the Nepal dispute, but they started doing a little handshaking when it came to the economic situation a couple years ago. I'm sure it's not a totally kumbaya relationship, but India sees the value of hard assets better than most Westerners, and China sees an ally in another Asian country, the largest Asian country next to them, really. So it's a marriage of convenience, maybe, if you will. We'll see how long I'm sure us and others would try to put a wedge in between that any way we could. Practical Outdoors, welcome. Good morning. How you doing? We had technical difficulties on the original, but we're trying to catch up here now. Hey, if you got any stories out there, we got about 10 minutes left. Throw them out. If you want anything talked about, looked up, whatnot. But everything's up other than the Florida news. There's not a whole lot out. If the Syria news is pretty much off the headlines, the Netanyahu indictment is off the headlines. Here in America, at least, a lot of stuff got pushed to the bottom of the page by the incident in Florida yesterday, unless you're focused solely on one thing, economics, sports, or otherwise. Tactical Tony's in the house. What's the red alert for? Can I get a little update on that? Sirens don't do me much good if I don't know what they're for, Tony. All of South America in the news, Walter Davis? Is that what you're saying? Other than just Venezuela falling apart? Russia has a missile defense interceptor. That's not surprising, but I guess they have a new one. Yeah, that's about the way it worked, James. Everything gets pushed out of the news cycle to get the scoop out of Florida, even though, as we shared at the beginning, for those of you just seeing, and I was talking to Tony about this last night, the FBI knew or was warned He was because a lot of details started coming out way too early. It's like, how does all this detail come out? Well, the FBI already knew who he was, had been warned about him. Yeah, Walter, that's a good point. Venezuela's pulling down a majority of South America. It's hard, especially when they're not exporting oil, so they don't have a close trading partner for stuff like that. They got to go elsewhere and pay more. Um, but nobody wants to cover it because it shows the failures of socialism, and nobody wants to talk about that. They want to talk about the human interest stories, the few stories you can get up here in America is about rogues on the highways robbing convoys and pro baseball players' moms getting kidnapped. They don't hit the real in-depth stuff on how the government has undermined the whole economy. This should be an interesting story. Banks forced to innovate for the first time in 40 years, and this is probably going to be the situation. Banks are going to make their own, or I shouldn't say banks, the Fed, who gives the money to the banks, is going to innovate some form of blockchain. Some might call it the number of the beast, but we shall see. To be determined. I wouldn't touch it, but that's just me. This warning here, this was from yesterday. I was going to briefly hit this. FBI warns Chinese spy operatives have infiltrated American universities. FBI, that's like 40 years too late information. I hate to tell you. Mud volcano in Trinidad. Walter says, I have not seen anything about a volcano in Trinidad. Trinidad, Tobago? So pull up. Stories. It's 2 days ago story, it looks like. Looks like it's buried a village. So definitely a natural disaster. You want to talk about being prepared? There's another good story. Whoa, let me get this proportional here. Get up in there. Similar to earthquakes, they don't have a lot of warning, but they do have some. So if you're prepping, you can kind of know the signs. Listen to the news guy, stuff like that. 25 families, mud volcano, were told to evacuate. Last erupted in 1995, so you know it's active. It's kind of like living in Hawaii in certain places. You know, you got active volcanoes nearby. We were told to evacuate after it rumbled to life early yesterday morning, and that would have been Sunday morning. This article is from 2 days ago, so we'll assume this is Tuesday morning. So maybe Monday morning, when the volcano started hitting out. (8:52), the eruption we witnessed. "25 households living in close proximity, what they call the Devil's Woodyard mud volcano." They're very detailed in their locations. Hoodesdon Road, New Grant, were told to evacuate the area. 150 feet in either direction of the crater. So it's a rather small footprint, but something that's very. Why would you live that close? Of course, you can always walk up to it and play with it, I guess. So highly liquid mud flow of some, like I guess you call it. It's not necessarily magma, but really heated liquid earth, I guess, maybe way to say it. No, Galenas Vilcas, I don't think it's that bad. Yeah, interesting. Not your standard volcano. Um, and it looks kind of be of a tourist attraction with those guys standing next to it in that picture. Yeah, not quite what I'd call catastrophic. Didn't say anything about injuries in there. Somebody in the side chat. Okay, I thought somebody in the side chat said people have been killed, but a few. Walter had said a few handful of people died. Oh, they didn't say that in any of those in that article. Um, I wonder if this will come up. Drone footage. That'd be interesting. Glenis Vilcas, thanks for joining us. I think Trinidad's still going to be fine. It's probably what you call island paradise like Maldives, right? Is there video? Okay, let's see if this comes up well. Let's everybody get a nice tour of the island nation of Trinidad. I guess it's a drone out of a seismic research center. So yeah, it's a real small footprint, but people were living close enough to have to evacuate their homes. I guess you can see kind of big mud wall pushed up the ground. Yeah, Walter, I don't know about that first article you read because when they had a warning and even said they had a meeting with the fire chief and they all had advance notice to evacuate. So like, and it was slow moving. It's like a mud flow, but across flat ground. Even like you can see, it's not super like not like an avalanche or anything. So they had plenty of time to move out of the way. It's almost like you could walk out of the way if you needed to. Seems like, but and nobody said anything about any deaths on here so far. So this is what a mud volcano looks like next time you hear about it, and the American media tries to play it up a little bit. It's clickbait, James, right? Clickbait. It's all about the clicks. Media trying to get that number. Media, they're advertising dollars in, and there wasn't even any houses like in that video. But this is a couple days old, so it could have expanded since then. They actually heard the rumbling around 4 a.m. and lasted for several minutes, so it'd be like a small earthquake. That'd be pretty impressive. Way to wake up. Um, all taking precautions and nothing about any injuries or deaths. Interesting, different things. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming. Hey, Jay Thornton, thanks for joining us. Oh, that's only okay, James. I got you. Your definition of clickbait is a little different than necessarily everybody's. But not a whole lot else in the chat room. Anybody else got anything else they know about, would like to talk about, discuss on the news this morning, other than Florida? We could talk about that. That's a whole different chat. We could dedicate a whole chat to Florida. That's for sure. Wait a second. What's this? Carjacking surged to decade highs in Chicago. Oh, kind of the same in Venezuela too. Hey, Southern Bell Gaming, how you doing? Thanks for joining us this morning. Any news in your area of the country other than the rain you're potentially getting or will be getting? This was something I wanted to hit yesterday and didn't get around to because obviously we got kicked out. So we'll wrap it up with this and move on. I'm a little bit over time, but trying to make up for having to switch streams this morning. So Hungary pushed an anti-immigration, what they call it, a Stop Soros bill. They actually named it that. Thought that was very interesting. Because having to do with the what was that big confab they had out there with all the rich elite over in Europe? What do they call that? But Soros made a statement there about open societies and borders and such like that, and Hungary's pushing back, and they actually named their bill to prevent immigration the Stop Soros bill. Because if you don't know, Eastern Europe is in full-on revolt against the open borders policy of the EU. Poland, Hungary, Bulgaria, probably the Czech Republic, and the others. So Soros is going after Hungary for some reason directly by calling the leader and calling Hungary a mafia state. Soros called Hungary a mafia state, pot calling the kettle black, you know. So in this war of words, they named a bill an anti-Soros billboard, and they put up billboards. We could use a little bit of that in America, if you know what I mean. So this bill that they have proposed in Hungary would impose a 25% tax on NGOs that back in migration that are operating in Hungary. So if you support open borders, you're going to get a 25% tax if you're in Hungary operating. If we pass this in America, everybody have to leave the country. We'd have to get rid of Coca-Cola, Microsoft, Apple, Google. It'd be a high tax revenue, or they'd leave one or the other. So the bill submitted to Parliament late Tuesday is a key part of the Prime Minister's anti-immigration campaign targeting U.S. financier George Soros, whose philanthropy, as they call it, aims to bolster liberal and open border values in Eastern Europe. Because they already overtook Western Europe, so they got to take over Eastern Europe now. They're the last ones that are kind of holding on to their principles, because Poland, Hungary, and Bulgaria and those countries have been run over for the last 200 years. They've seen what happens, or probably actually more than that. They've been the crossroads. You figure the Ottoman Empire, go back before the Turks. I mean, they've, between the Russians, the Germans, and then the French and everybody else coming through there to take over and conquer and everything else, they're tired of it. They have an opportunity to push back. They are. Hungary and Poland are both under nationalist governments that have clashed with the European Union leadership in Brussels over the perceived authoritarian drift deviating from EU standards on democracy and rule of law. There you go. Hey, Truth Freeze, what's up? How you doing? I'm not sure what your comment means, Truth. Just shy of 10, 25, got to do 12 at most. I have no idea what you're talking about. Does somebody else make a comment up above? Right, Walter? Yeah, the Hungarians and all that Eastern Europe corridor has been pretty brutal for the last 400 or 500 years, I guess we could say, if we looked back. Oh, the percent of tax that they're putting on these corporations? Well, they're sending a message: stop your open borders crap. Stop trying to overtake our country through immigration, and or get out. Which I don't blame them at all. We could use a little bit of that here. Either just do business, stop pushing your political BS, or get out. But final in the highlights here, underlined there in the middle of the screen, Orban's message championing conservative Christian beliefs and rejecting multiculturalism has gone down well with Hungarian voters, and his Fidesz party is expected to secure a third straight term in general elections due on April 8th. There you go. Interesting story. George Soros at the center of it. I wish we didn't call him a U.S. financier because he's European, but he's adopted America, I guess, is his target of his affections. So we have to deal with it. All right, folks, I've went a little bit over just to make up some time. I got to head out. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for joining us in the midst of our technical difficulties that we adapted and overcame. But yeah, James McIntyre, Walter Davis, Southern Bell Gaming, Jay Thornton was out there. Tactical Tony joined us. Practical Outdoors, Southern Arkansas Homestead. Smoking Locust was back at the beginning. Barry Wood, Jay Sparks, Irish USMC vet. Hope I didn't miss anybody. Daniel got as my judge. Hope you had a good day at the doctor and that everything works out good. Blessings to all y'all. Thanks for joining us. But please say a prayer, everybody, for everybody in Florida, the victims, and be with them out there through this tough week and go out, live free.